Okay. Hello again, and it is my privilege to be here and to represent Ububele this morning. I found your introduction, Dane, most inspiring. Myself, Catherine, and Esther are representing Ububele this morning, and I really want to reiterate our support for Dane's idea of an integrated, interdisciplinary approach, really to meet the mental health needs of our country. And in a way, I look forward to participating in the dialogue here today, but also in you in the weeks and months, 18 months, as you said, going forward. Because I think the organizations represented here, Lafika, Kanya, JPCCC, and ourselves, Ububele, provide a model, I think, for private healthcare, private health, mental health professionals to make a contribution to the work that we are doing and that we will be presenting today. Already at Ububele, we have a growing number of volunteers and low-fee recipients of services, and I think this is a real model that looks at public health and a way of mobilizing the 500 members in the 50 groups that you talked about, Dan. So I'm very excited about joining with you in that dialogue. Okay, so I'll be talking today about what I've actually conceptualized as a net of services within a basket of opportunities. Now, these metaphors will make themselves more clear, and I hope they really do evoke something in your mind as a way of working and as a way of reaching people in need. But just to give a little bit of a history, as most of you know, Ububele is an NGO based here in Kew. We provide services and training with a focus on the community of Alexandra. We've been around since 1999, and they've not been all that easy times, but I think we've tried to adapt and amalgamate and be thoughtful about our interventions so as to carry on providing meaningful, thoughtful, sober work to the community that we serve. That final point there, we draw an attachment theory, as Dane mentioned, really with the belief that early intervention, securing strong relationships at the very beginning, is you get the most bang for your buck, for your clinical time, for your energy, for your money in intervening early. But it's not only that early intervention, it's then providing subsequent opportunities for young families to be able to access services going on, so that the gains that are made at the beginning are supplemented and supported and can be held as the child goes into school, as the family deals with the challenges that come with growing up in this context. So there's just an image of our context. Here we sit, actually, right in between those two worlds. The big wealth of Sandton, just a stone's throw away from some of the poorest people in the Southern Hemisphere. So this contradiction and all the stress that comes with living in that binary world. Okay, there's some more images just to arouse your imagination. On the bottom left of the screen is Zanele Vilakazi with her umbrella, walking to do a home visit, intervening early with a family in their home to be able to support, like that image in the top right of your screen, a mom and baby relationship, supporting as far as she can the security of attachment. Okay, so just take a second, if you wouldn't mind, just having a look at our programs. These have really been added on to each other as the organization has grown and developed and found an identity. And you'll see our focus very much on the 0 to 2s, firstly. And I'll fly through some of those projects. Some of you are familiar with them already. Our Baby Mat project, our Newborn Behavioral Observation project, Home Visiting project, and then as a final triage, so to speak, parent-infant psychotherapy, if additional support is needed for families. Then we've got our parent-child projects that focuses on the slightly older child, the 3 to 6, where we have a very busy therapy and assessment clinic, and this is where a lot of volunteers from private practice assist us. Then we have our persona doll groups for children in the foundation phase of school, where they are provided with an opportunity to talk about their feelings in a non-threatening way. Our parenting workshops, and we have had a time of providing drama therapy within foundation phase at our schools within this area. Very much in line with our clinical interventions has been a focus on training our peers, professionals and non-professionals in infant mental health theory, whether that is the WICA, which stands for the Working with the Caregiver-Infant Relationship. The foundation of that training, as is the introduction to parent-infant psychotherapy, is again attachment theory and the value of supporting these relationships in whatever context our trainees find themselves, whether they are childcare workers at a children's home, whether they are caregivers at a daycare center, whether they are auxiliary nurses in a pediatric ward, or if they are psychologists in private practice trying to meet the needs of isolated mothers behind 6-foot walls in the suburbs. We've then added our baby mat training onto the introduction to infant mental health training, our newborn behavioral observation training, persona adult training, working with groups and thinking about the early child. Again, take a minute please to just internalize this image. I was hoping to be able to superimpose that net over those services. In a way, our model is that we provide a net through these various services to be able to catch at-risk families. So through different ports of entry, we might, one aspect of the net might be the baby mat project. Another aspect of the net might be a persona doll group or a parenting training. So in a sense, these ports of entry combine to increase the likelihood that at-risk families will be caught before the negative cycle of whatever their risk factors might have led to. Is that clear? Okay. And then this luscious image then of the privilege for us of once we have people in a varied port of entry, we can then select from our basket of services, whether that is, as Esther will be presenting shortly, our bus, our mobile bus, or in that there might be a need for a persona doll group if there's a particular theme, or we might say urgently I need to allocate a child or a family to some family therapy. So it's really the privilege and the responsibility of maintaining that privilege that we have a basket of services to meet the needs of that particular family and what challenges they may be facing. So some of the ingredients of this basket of services, you can fly through that one, I've been through that one, Esther. Okay, let me talk about that quickly. In a sense, the net finds itself in the range of these sites. One, at this building that we all are here today, primary healthcare clinics within Alexandra, our Brown House, which is, we've got two therapy rooms at one of the biggest primary healthcare clinic within Alex. We offer services at the Hillbrow Clinic in the center of Joburg, and then our mobile bus. So in a sense, these different sites form part of this net. These are the places where we might be able to catch, where we have opportunities to catch at-risk families and small children. In all aspects of our work, we've tried to make adaptations to the theory and our practice to be able to responsibly and ethically reach our clients. We've highlighted the training and resourcing of mental health practitioners from this context. So one, although economically, everywhere, we're in a recession, we really are trying to nurture building the skills and our staff of community health workers, and the title we've called our community health workers here at Ububele are early childhood community practitioners. And we always try to be respectful of culturally diverse ways of parenting, at the same time acknowledging that parenting in this particular context has a tremendous load of challenges, and I think in a lot of parts of Alexandra there are such levels of stress that one could call it toxic stress, and that's been well documented as being pervasive in affecting good enough practices. I think I've spoken about that. We're making use of lay practitioners. We're trying to adapt our interventions for the local setting. Some of our interventions are developed here. We're trying to, although that's not our focus, to research our interventions because they're if we want to have a conversation around public health interventions, we have to be able to show that they're effective. We can't hide behind intuition. We have to have an evidence base. And ultimately, the rationale is that these early interventions are the most cost effective. Okay, I'm going to fly through these and really leave the exciting part to Esther. So here's some of our projects, and these images I hope will imagine how it works. The Baby Mat project, in situ at a primary healthcare clinic, in full view of moms, dads, babies, grannies awaiting their immunizations. The home visiting project, which really grew from our Baby Mat project, where moms and babies and families can access services in their homes, since we've really heard in bits of research that we've done that accessing services when you're feeling overwhelmed is a hindrance. It's too difficult to come to Ububele if you're feeling really depressed. So we've, for the last 6 years now, have been offering home visits. Our persona doll groups, where children, we train teachers, children in preschools are able to access some psychological mindedness through a doll who helps them explore some of their feelings. And then this is the one that Esther will be talking about today. A relatively new addition to our net and basket of services is the Ububele Mobile Therapy Clinic. All of this is done, again, I think if I counted myself how many times I said that, I'd be approaching probably 100 times by now, but all of this is in service of building a secure attachment between caregiver and infant, because if that security of attachment is not there, there are consequences. And this slide, that image on the right, is really the slide of an insecurely attached child. And you can just see there are just blanks.
In the image of the brain?
Yeah. Image of a brain, yeah. Okay. Thank you, that's me. And I certainly hope that you enjoy Esther's presentation and that it will be thought-provoking and inspiring for us to put your name on our list of volunteers that assist us here at Ububele or would like to participate in our low-fee clinics. Thank you very much.
Morning, everyone. It's not very often you get an opportunity to speak about something that you're so passionate about. So I'm excited to share in this project with you guys, and I'm hoping to take you all through a journey and for you to use your imagination and just imagine the context in which we work with. So Catherine spoke about the different services and the baskets of services, and I'm just going to fly through where the bus goes in Alex. So last year we did a lot of work at a lot of the schools, which we're doing less of now at primary school level and high school level. But this year we're having a focus on model schools. So it's ECD, creches with babies from birth until 3 years old. So we've got a couple of model schools that we've added to the bus trips this year. And in addition, we have the play groups, which is what I'm going to speak about. And also, we use the bus for one of the baby mats at one of the clinics, East Bank Clinic, to have a baby mat on the clinic. And recently, we've also started to use the bus to go on home visits with some of the home visitors. Some of the areas are hard for them to access, and they need the bus driver to accompany them, and sometimes they need to use the bus to actually do the home visit on. So just to talk you through the journey of the bus. So it's a baby. We're still in our infancy period. We launched in September 2015, and we have called it the Ububele Ubuntu bus. And that kind of speaks to the spirit in which we want to go into the community and be received by the community also. And the bus really offers mobile therapeutic services in areas that otherwise primarily wouldn't have access to such services. So instead of them coming here to Kew or going to Brown House Clinic to see a psychologist, we take the bus and offer the services right there in their community and in their context. And it offers a different service based on the aims of Ububele. So we've tried to really incorporate a lot of what Catherine was talking about, thinking about infancy, early intervention, and use that in all the projects of the bus. And today I'm going to focus on the playgroup intervention, which has been very exciting, very painful, but a really big learning experience that I think we've all grown from at Ububele. And in the photos, at the top is our Ububele Ubuntu bus, and on the left is Amy, who manages the bus, and on the right is Tozamile, who drives the bus. And he's more than just a driver. He actually gets really involved in the work, in the play groups. He's quite protective of us, and he really looks out for us. So he's a nice person to have accompany us into the areas that we go into. So Stretla is located in Alexandra Township, just 14 kilometers from Johannesburg CBD, which is the largest and richest metropolitan in Africa, and barely 5 kilometers from Sandton, which is the financial heart of Gauteng and South Africa. Indeed, the inhabitants of Stretla are living in the margins of Gauteng's megacity in terms of development, while in spatial location, they are right at the core. This is the paradox of being at the center and at the margin at the same time. Despite the opulence and prestige associated with Sandton, which is a regional economic hub, people living only 5 kilometers away are wallowing in deep poverty. And I quote, "The shame of Alexandra, it is a stinking cesspool of overflowing dustbins, litter-lined streets and angry residents, the stench of human excreta, filth, dust, and indescribable squalor. There is fear and there is despair. Yet there is also an indescribable will to survive, in dauntless defiance of intolerable living conditions," end quote. Stretla lies in a narrow strip of land between the Alexandra Cemetery and the Jeskei River. Although some of the main areas of Alexandra, such as East Bank, have been upgraded, Stretla is still composed of shacks, and a visit to the area reveals extreme poverty and congestion. Stretla is separated from the Alexandra main settlement by a cemetery. Contrary to most sections, it is exclusively informal, packed with unorganized shacks with no through roads. Mobile toilets only along the main road. There are no public services. There is one preschool, and there are no clinics. Residents have to go to other sections for such services. There is a communal tap where they can get water from. Oh, sorry, Catherine, please go back to the last one. So if you look at this picture, and at the back you can see that the cemetery is there, and living below the living and slightly above the dead, literally and figuratively. And a careful look at the picture of Stretla shows that it's bordered by a graveyard. The most amazing thing about Stretla is how near to death people live. Interestingly, Stretla is bordered by Jeskei on the east and Alexandra Cemetery on the west. Reminders of death pervade the residents' lives all the time. In November last year, the community was left devastated after flash floods, where little 3-year-old Everett Chauke was swept away and died, despite her father's best efforts to save her from their shack that was lined along the river. Okay. So that was to hopefully give you a bit of a context into what it feels like going into Stretla and what some of the work looks like. And in thinking about Stretla more, it's really just an informal settlement with a population that's mostly Tsonga speaking, although there's a very diverse cultural group, also quite a large number of a foreign population. And articles are quite contradictory. Some say it's been there since 1996, others say it's been there since 1987. And it's growing all the time. I mean, literally when we go week by week, there are always new structures that are going on in Stretla. And in 2008, it was reported that there's a population of 30,000, but there was an estimated increase of 30,000 more people within a few years. And there are very high levels of unemployment and poverty, as I've said. And there are very few spaces for the children to play. And I've spoken about how there's such a restriction to access to services. Also, something that we found really interesting when we began doing our work in Stretla was the meaning behind Stretla. There are two. The one meaning is like a prostitute, and the other meaning is like the grub you get under your shoe. So those are the meanings people have attached to the area of Stretla, an area that many people call their home. So when we went into Stretler, we had this bus and we're thinking about what we're going to do with this bus. And we really had to do a lot of field work, a lot of going into the community and meeting people one-on-one, interacting with them, kind of doing a needs assessment. And we spent months doing that, and it was a hard process. We kind of wanted to just start, but we also didn't want to be insensitive, and we wanted to really hear from the community what they needed. So there was a lot of groundwork. We had to meet with the counsellors and find out from them what their needs were, all the while dealing with our own fears and anxieties about being in an area such as Stretler. But it's been surprising how the community has received us, which I will speak about more. Okay, so once we did a lot of the groundwork, we came together in supervision, which I'll speak about a little later on. And we tried to think about theoretically, how do we make this work? Now, we had an idea. We wanted to do something with children. We wanted to use the bus. We had a whole bunch of toys and books. And we thought about the power of observation and kind of observing what's already there. So it really was theoretically based. A lot of psychoanalytic thinking and processing went on. And also the fact that if we had this play group for them, we could offer some kind of containment to a lot of the children who would otherwise play. There was play going on before we got there, but in spaces that weren't maybe contained or set up just for them. And also this allowed us an opportunity to understand the community and go into the community in a non-intrusive way. So generally we've also just really tried to think about psychoanalytic concepts such as sticking to the frame. So we have 90-minute sessions with the children. In this particular spot in Stretler, there are actually 2 play groups a week. So we go on a Monday afternoon and a Thursday morning. And there's a play group in Stretler, but at the Gift of the Givers. And then there's one at the Women's Hostel. Okay, Catherine, I think I'll just run through that. Yes, and Linda kind of spoke about some of the educational value of these play groups, but also that there's a therapeutic value of observing and giving some kind of containment through the words that we use, and also modeling to parents how we interact and respond to their children and the way that they respond to the cues that their children give them, and making them aware of that, which you'll hear about in some of the material. So I will speak of little T. She is a 4-year-old girl, and I'll read a transcript. Thinking about the time we spent in Stretler every Monday often leaves me feeling both excited and frustrated. While our group grows, more mums and little children and tiny steps forward in terms of developing the work and developments in play, our space diminishes. Not going this week because of the rain and cold made me think about the constraints of the community. They have limited space and resources, and also their lives are so heavily affected by the weather. It speaks of the unpredictability and frustrations of living there, and I marvel at how people manage to hold down jobs, make it to school, and thrive when there is so much working against them. Despite our constraints and limitations, I often reflect on the developments that we have observed over the past few months. Little T, a 3-year-old girl, has visited the mat from the very beginning. She always comes towards the bus, but for a long time did not join the group. She would either sit and watch from afar, seemingly busy with the sand or a teddy bear that she had held on to. Carla and I often wondered about her in the past few weeks. Slowly she got closer to the mat, and each week we would encourage her to join, and each week she would watch from afar. For a couple of weeks she came close to the mat and played with a teddy right next to the mat. About a month ago, she became interested in an interaction between Linda and a few of the children reading a book. She looked at them and then picked up a book and began turning the pages. I went over to her and we looked at the pictures together, called out the names of things or mentioned the colors that we saw, and she sat very close to me and listened, occasionally pointing. The following week, she stood at the fence watching us, and I walked over to her and took her hand, leading her to the mat. She immediately took a book and began turning the pages. The next week, I fetched her from the little gate again. In the same week, a mum, Joanna, came with the baby on her back. We chatted a bit. She explained that she had 3 children and this was her baby. She seemed old and quite worn out, and I checked again that this little T was her baby, wondering if I'd maybe misunderstood. And she assured me that she was indeed mom. I inquired about her other children, and she explained that little T with her daughter and a son were the 3 of her children. I told her that little T had been coming for a while and that she was a bit shy at first, but that she really enjoyed reading. She laughed, and I asked if that was surprising, and she nodded and explained that little T didn't like to learn with her at home. I said that I wondered why, and she said that she liked to be with other children older than her, not the little baby. And I asked Mum how little T felt about having a new baby, and she laughed and said, "Aye, T, I don't know, but she likes older ones." And I explained that little T came straight for the books and pointed at her, and true enough, little T had a book in her hand and was carefully and slowly flipping the pages. And this made Mum smile. And I called over to little T and said, "Look who has come to see you read, it's Mum." And she came over to us and stood between Mum's legs with her book in her hand. And I asked if she wanted to show Mum what she was reading and helped her to open the book. Little T and Mum named the animals together. And I said to Mum that she is learning with you. Little T continues to come each week, and although she needs some encouragement to get there, she plays well with the others and mostly wants to read. Last week, as I was introducing myself to a new mum and taking her details down, little T's mum put her hand on my shoulder and said hello. I turned to face her and greeted her by name, saying that little T was with us, and she smiled, and before she turned to leave, she hugged me. So this just kind of illustrates the opportunities that we have to interact with the parents as well as the children, and just telling the parents what we've observed about their children, which they really find valuable. So in Stretla, it's been really hard to secure a space for ourselves. Every week we kind of go and there's less and less room for us. And this is something that we've really had to negotiate. Toza, our driver, really also gets quite frustrated with the driving. It's not an easy place to drive a big bus into. But what we've noticed about moms and fathers and parents around us is that they really come together and they even sweep up the spot for us so that we can have our play group. And I think this shows us how much ownership they've taken of the play group and how invested they are and how valuable they see it for themselves and for the children. Yeah. And I think something that's quite important to speak about is the male presence on and off the bus. So this year, for the first time, in addition to Toza the driver, we've got a male intern who joins the play group. And he's got very interesting views of his experience. I'll just read a couple of points that I had put on the slide. The one before, sorry, Catherine. Yeah. So this was Haley, one of our psychologists, writing. She said, while packing up, a drunk man came up to Thomas and said, "Hey, Mulungu, do you have money for me? I want to buy a drink." And Thomas casually replied, holding his pockets, "This Mulungu got no money." And another experience was of Jody, another intern psychologist, and in her transcript she wrote, "As I begin to relax with the children, as they explore my hair and the color of my skin, an old man appears, drunk and angry. He begins telling me that I don't belong. He asks why I think no one will talk to me, and he reminds me that I'm not like them. He shouts to me to learn the language, and he makes me repeat phrases after him. I feel threatened and overwhelmed. This isn't how this should be. I come in peace, but peace is complicated. I hurt so badly. I was relieved when another woman with light brown skin became the focus of this man's attack, and she yelled at him at such intensity that it frightened the children." So it really is, like Thomas said, it goes on a continuum. Sometimes we experience the fathers and the men around there as being very helpful and a secure space. And at other times, it can feel quite threatening for some of our practitioners to be in that space. It's fine, Catherine. I won't do that. So I think looking back, the community has really experienced the group as something that's quite important to them. And as I spoke about earlier, that they've tried to, in their best efforts, to protect and keep the space for us and for their children. And a lot of the parents actually refer to the play groups as their creche. And I think one of the things that's been really important for us to note is that one of the children that attended our play group last year, he was taken back to Zimbabwe by his dad to go to school. And because he had no previous schooling experience, he wasn't in nursery school, he wasn't in creche, they wouldn't put him into grade 1. And we had an end of year party for them, and we gave them little certificates of attendance. And they asked the dad, has he never had an experience of a preschool? And he said, well, there's this play group that he used to attend twice a week, and he's got a certificate for it. And they said, bring that. And he gave it to him, and that certificate got him admitted into school. So I think that just showed us how valuable the service is beyond what we even imagined. That wasn't the aim for us, but that's what we reaped at the end. I think maybe one thing that's important to speak about is the identity that we've been given, that's been placed on us in a way. Our teams are multiracial, so there's always someone black and someone white, or someone of color and someone white. Apart from, at the moment, there is a group with Thomas and Linda who are both white. But regardless of our race, we've actually all been called Mulungu. So they usually chant the song, Mulungu, Mulungu. Mulungu is here. And I think we spent a lot of time in supervision really thinking about what that meant. You can go to the next slide. And I think we came to a conclusion that it was just being the other, that we, even though the color of my skin is similar to, is exactly the same as the color of their skin, I am from a different almost caliber, or from a different point of privilege. And that was something that's been really hard for us to interrogate within ourselves. Also the fact that we're able to go into this community and then remove ourselves, and they are stuck there with all the despair that they live with. And so the term Mulungu has really been something that we've really had to interrogate deeply in our supervision and amongst each other. Maybe in closing, I'd like to spend just a minute talking about this image. So because we don't take pictures of anybody, we snuck this picture in because it had nobody in the frame, but because I think it was an important moment for us to capture. In the picture, you see there's a whole lot of grubble, and in that corner, that's where we used to have our play group. And beginning of the year, someone started building a house, and we were surprised each week as we got there that there wasn't much movement. And a couple of weeks ago, one of the dads who was close to our area spoke to Tozamile, the driver, and he said, you see that house? Every night the community members go and break it down because they don't want them to use up that space. That space is for the bus and it's for the children. So this house has literally just been at foundation level for the past 8 months. And I think that just speaks to the relationships that we've built with the people in Stretla, and how much we've learned and how much they've learned. And we don't feel like outsiders anymore. We know the children, we know the families, and we have relationships outside of there. Some mothers from our play groups have come in our parenting programs. One particular mother volunteers for translation at Ububele. And so our relationships are going beyond twice weekly visits into Stretla. And I think that's really something that will continue to grow. And I think in closing, with this quote, certainly no one will say that Stretla is free. Not yet. The community has too many roads to walk before that can become reality, which is also something that we really grapple with. We also are very aware of the social injustice and the poverty, and that's something that we just don't have control over. But we'll continue to offer the service and continue to be in the community of Stretla. Thank you.
90 minutes each session.
Is everyone off the bus? So I didn't understand the part. You guys do the deputy work inside the bus, out the bus?
Yeah, I mean all around the bus, on the mat. It's not like a typical play therapy. It's more observation and kind of giving meaning to the play that the children have, connecting with the parents, thinking with the parents about how their children are trying to communicate.
So the bus will arrive at a point, then the bus practitioners, including the driver, will put a mat down, put a gazebo up, because there are too many children that are coming to use the space inside. So there might be a little pocket of children that will go in and read quietly there, while there's a smaller pocket playing with blocks or Lego on the actual bus and the gazebo, for example. Yeah. But that would be flexible.
What do you deal with the regular ending of the session? Very short once children get involved. You find it's better than you need?
It's very difficult for them and for us. At times they really do act out, so they'll build guns and they'll shoot us. They'll beg us not to stay. There's a lot of anxiety sometimes right from the time we arrive. They will really start asking, are you leaving, are you leaving? There's a little girl who says, oh, is it quarter to leave? She always asks us. So we try and manage that as much as we can, but we also then know that it's important to keep to the frame and to go weekly. As hard as it is sometimes to get there logistically, and the roads are blocked a lot of the time, even if it's raining, we still go and we just tell them we're not able to come because we have nowhere to play. So we really try and keep that going.
So putting them all into the bus is not realistic.
No, not at all. There are too many. It varies. So at times we'll have about 12 moms and 30 kids. But I think the most has been about 60 children, especially during the school holidays. It's very busy, a lot of older children. So that's also something that we have to manage.
The 2/3.
2 years. And it wasn't legal.
There are two things I'd like to ask or make a reflection really about your presentation. I wanted to ask a question about your presentation. The one thing that struck me while you were speaking is how you're looking at the material in a psychoanalytic way. I mean, I don't know why I'm emphasizing this, but I think I do know why I'm emphasizing it. Because one's got to imagine the container, and one's got to read into, and almost like an artist does, imagine something. So a person sweeping the ground to make a space has got a lot of meaning. It means you're welcome. It means somebody's wanted to prepare your way, and it means the container is ritualistically set up. Now, this way of thinking seems to be another reason why a sort of depth approach will give us access to ways of working, because we don't have the concrete, we don't have access to the concrete container. We have got to then imagine a containment. And so we've got to go underneath the sort of fetishizing of a concrete space. And the baby mat and the sweeping of the space is a pragmatic approach, but it also introduces a way of interacting symbolically. So that a person who comes up and says that the old man shouting is an aggressor, but it's also something to do with what is the meaning of saying you must learn my language. And your choice of examples and your photographs and your observations is very touching, because it really shows that you've got those lenses on and observing the meaning of things, not just the thing as it is, but the meaning of it. And I think that's it's very moving and it's very liberating. Because it means you can do the work anywhere. If you've just got that head and heart, you can do it anywhere. And your examples were very, very beautiful, I thought, as well as psychoanalytic or something like that. Helpful. What else did I have to say? Yes, in terms of that, I just wondered about the photographs, whether it was the actual concrete photograph that was the problem, or it was being observed. And you made this point very well. It sounded like there's a lot of shame being represented as being poor and being stuck underneath your shoe. So it seemed to me that it might be about being photographed, but not just the photograph. It's about the reason why you're there is because we're caught between a flooding Yukscape and a cemetery, and we just feel like the wretched of the earth. Whether you photograph us or whether you come to see us, we know that we're right at the bottom of the ladder and we feel embarrassed and ashamed, and you pointed that out. And I just wondered if the photograph itself was the issue, or if what the photograph did was, here's a photograph of someone who looks wretched. And it's just like, oh, am I that? And that's all I am. And you made the point. You said, seeing the person for only that and not seeing the other aspects of it. And it was very, very beautifully, very sensitively observed. I appreciate that. So I wanted to ask Catherine, in terms of the interdisciplinary model, and deciding who needs what, do you meet as a team and discuss how, maybe we can have this conversation elsewhere, but it just, when you say we've got a basket of resources, and can we work out what is suitable for whom? It strikes me that there could be a team of people who must sit together and say, okay, this one's a bit shy, we'll do this one's more extroverted, we'll do a group with them, or this one we'll... How do you manage that part of it?
It's not quite like that. It's more like a report of entry idea, so the different services that are available, and then so someone might come in and access the bus, for example. And we have one meeting a week where we talk case management, where we talk clinically about future referrals and managing individual cases. We might hear then about a little girl who looks like things are not good at home. And then Esther might say, I saw X at the playgroup on Tuesday. This is what you know. Let's allocate to a home visitor. Who then the home visitor project manager will say, okay, I know so-and-so is available, got the number, hook up and go.
Fabulous. Yeah. It's really nice to hear that that's for everybody to hear as well, that that's how it's been navigated. I like that word about it. Thanks very much.
Well, this is just a comment on what I said when you spoke about when somebody shared the experience of approaching those four women that they were actually wanted, thought that the pictures were going to be taken and talking about afterwards people come take photos and then afterwards we're still poor in comparison to you having treated that community and how much I can just imagine that also when you go there, the lot of questions as to what are they going to do for us, are they coming to alleviate our poverty in any way, but in the way that they welcomed you and accepted you and maybe now in their mind, even though they can start to not bringing anything concrete to say you alleviate their poverty, but how much they valuing your presence and how much they become so protective of you in a sense that it's not about you alleviating their poverty, but just your presence being there and coming to them.
As we speak, I'm just thinking about one of the anecdotes. Who's the mom that sat and waited for 6 months? Just sat in the room. Can you speak?
That was one of the things I wanted to speak about. So one of the children that joins our playgroup, so her house was right by like the edge of the mat. And we used to see her sitting there and watching us for months and months and months, about 6 months. And she never came and she never brought her daughter until eventually she did. And one of the psychologists had a conversation with her and she said, we've been seeing you sitting there, why did it take you so long to join us? And she said, I didn't want my daughter to come until I knew that you were here to stay. So that also was so powerful, that people come in and they're out, and they come and take pictures or whatever, and that's all it is. But I think what that mom said was so important. Exactly. Yeah. And I just want to respond about the photos. So lately, the moms have been taking photos of the group themselves. They've been documenting it, taking pictures of their kids, and just that they feel empowered enough to do that. Like they are taking the pictures, and we're not being intrusive and coming to just photograph their lives because we are.
It's a lovely second chapter. It's a lovely extension of that story. Thank you. I'm glad you said that.
I suppose I just want to reiterate your call that I think this is what it means to be a South African psychologist, I think. And it doesn't mean to exclusively be doing this, not at all. But I think it does mean that a proportion of your time should be involved in such creative endeavors.
because I think it's a human rights issue, really. So I hope that people will engage with Ububele and the other community organizations that are represented here, and for us to think creatively as a team, just as this has been a creative exercise, how people can make, for those of us that are committed to stay in this country, we make a commitment really to the people that need our skills.
Thank you.